Welcome to Lambs and Company, a podcast about life. We will have featured guests and friends on the podcast to have quality conversations and wonderful fellowship. We hope you will join us. It's a life worth living, and it's a life worth giving.
Well, I want to welcome this morning to Lambs and Company some very special friends and guests, Dr. Jay and Linda Leroux, and our our. There's a lot to be said just in this casual conversation this morning, and I want to ask you this morning if you would maybe tell us how we began together.
Go ahead, you start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a church plant in Connecticut, and we went there in late 1980, probably maybe early 81, and there was the pastors were from here, and that was really the beginning of us meeting you. I think we met you there at the church at one conference that we did. I think it was the Silas Ministry or something like that. It was, yeah. and uh and then of course out of that we came here in January of 83, and it began then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember you came to a conference that was here, and your sister and brother-in-law were living here, and you had gone by and you went in her office, but she wasn't in her office at the time. And I walked in, and that's really the first time I'd had the direct contact. And I remember because y'all had gotten a call from some folks, I think in Connecticut, about someone's eye
right.
being damaged. And I remember when I opened the door, there you were standing there with laying hands on Linda in proxy, praying over the eye for the person in Connecticut.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
remember.
I don't remember
Yeah, it
that.
Yeah.
wasn't they weren't there yet. It was about that. They
Yeah.
weren't here yet. It was another person I was laying hands on. Might have been Linda. Yeah. Well, part of the reason is because when we got born again, it was through the Catholic charismatic thing in 1978 probably. And from 78 to 83, um for us it was that we didn't have really the Bible, but there was just miracles there every single week. So it's kind of normal, and I still feel that way now, but remember it was always, I mean, for us it was, I mean, just the supernatural is just a normal thing. And so it's that anticipation then we still have it now, even though it seemed like it's slowed down a little bit in the miraculous. But from the very beginning there, it would, again, with that prayer group, once a week, in the town that Linda grew up in, all those churches had prayer groups. Every one of them, every single night they were meeting, there was some kind of miracle. Hearts, cancer, and demonic possession. We were at a motorcycle accident and laid hands on a guy that was dead. He was raised up from the dead. I mean, again, this was kind of like normal stuff, and I still feel that way, but that was part of the reason, we did that.
Yeah, I think people forget, that what Hebrews 13:8 says that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And what Paul said in Corinthians, I think Second Corinthians, he said, "The God who has delivered shall deliver." And other words, he's showing that the continuation of Christ's ministry happens in our lives every day, and it should. And yet somehow the church has gotten dumbed down in a lot of areas biblically. They've forgotten that this stuff isn't just for then and about when we go to heaven. It's about believing the Lord and receiving and expecting his ministry into our lives and our hearts currently today.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. But it's been that kind of same fun journey though the whole time, right?
Never a dull moment.
Yeah. Well, also, how about the fact that the Lord launched y'all from a church plant in actually Massachusetts?
Yeah,
Yeah, because I went up a couple of times to when y'all were pastoring in Worcester,
yeah,
and that was an interesting time period. And but then after that, when y'all stepped out and began JL Ministries, and what the Lord is currently doing with that. I mean, y'all not only ministered in your immediate state, but then the Lord has actually allowed you to go into multiple states all over the United States and out of the country. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I remember when we were not in our church plant in Massachusetts, we went back to Connecticut and worked with another ministry there. And Jay and some of the leaders there said, y'all need to be traveling ministry. And Jay came to me and he said, we're going to pray about start traveling, doing ministry. And I was like, you sure about this? And I remember I went to a conference in Dallas,
Yeah.
Texas, Mary Ann Brown,
Right.
and Jay was at a different men's or breakfast at a church in Connecticut, and we said, okay, we'll both pray this weekend, and then we'll come together and decide. And when I was there, the Lord just put it on my heart. Okay, I came back and I said to Jay, okay, if this is what you feel we're to do, let's go for it. And we started not having a whole lot of churches.
3.
And we talked about what we would call the ministry. And it was turned out to be JL Ministries, but there was a woman in the Bible, JL, Jael, and she put the stake in Caesarea's
Sisters, yeah.
head
Nice
and
girl.
to to kill the carnal nature. And I always liked that name, JL. But so that's how JL Ministries was born. Instead of JAL, we just called it.
I did it because it was Jay and Linda.
Yeah, well, and I didn't want
Not Jay
Jay and
Leroux.
I didn't want Jay and Linda, but
You
Yeah.
see, she's thinking biblical.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm thinking about us.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we did the 4-year Bible college in between, and which we really still love. And but that there was they really out of timing for that. And so and then we were offered to stay and pastor, but really the pastoring time was done for us. And we've been hearing about this particular thing prophetically probably from you remember the middle 80s, and I just thought we would do it later, like now. At this time of our life is when I thought we'd start, but yeah, no, and we everything has been kind of Abrahamic with us, obey him by faith, and we had 3 churches. One of them was Lambs, of course, at that time. We were always loved being around the college campuses in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York. But as far as branching out, we really didn't want to do that while we were pastoring or at the Bible college. So, yeah, it was nice. No, this is we just entered our 21st year
Mm.
doing this. And so it just evolved out of those 3 churches to where we are now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so
It's fun.
we're in our 37th year. So y'all kind of began with us our first year,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I guess to remember
And
on
the
yeah,
little church.
yeah,
on
over
Third Loop it
Yeah.
was.
2110 Second Loop Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it actually started at your house, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
almost how it was the
yeah.
beginning of it. Yeah.
And so, a lot of times people look at ministries and they don't realize the journey of where they came from to where they are. A lot of times people only see where they
Yeah.
are, or they see where somebody else is, and they don't understand that there's a journey for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody has a starting point. There's an alpha, and then there's an omega.
Yeah.
I
And
think what helped for JL Ministries was number one, the people that were in our lives to help, and then the church that we were a part of, and then the pastoring for 10 years in Massachusetts really taught us a lot and gave us a heart for ministries and especially pastors and the leaders in the churches we go to now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the time that we worked together here was, I think, beneficial. It was like I think at that time I was the number 4 guy, because we had 3 and then we were number 1 and 2, and then when we worked for the church in Connecticut, I was number 3. And so we had, and then the years
Yeah.
of the youth here and everywhere we went. Yes, it really, I think, which has caused us to absolutely love the local church.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can say about both of you is you have such um, a heart that you serve, and just a willingness to serve. And there's uh, there's just a life that's there, an example. And you've been a real encouragement, I know, to this local congregation for years because of that. And then our personal friendship with Anita and I, and our relationship over the years. And it's been a bit different because Anita is not a typical pastor's wife. A lot of people
Right.
in the South, they think a pastor's wife, she kind of leads the choir and, sings in the choir or something like that. But that's never been Anita because she's in
Yeah.
the medical field, but she's always been behind the scenes and very supportive
Yeah.
and very much, there to give of herself. The truth is, if she hadn't have been, there wouldn't have been, probably Lamb's Chapel would have never made it, off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But part of the encouragement, Linda, you and Jay have both been a real encouragement to Anita over the years, and always have affirmed
Yeah.
her in her life as a person and her identity and areas that she gives and serves. But that's sometimes serving is more than just showing up and being visible. Sometimes is what we do on a day-to-day basis in people's lives. And y'all have been a great example, continue to be a great
Yeah.
example for all of us in that. And I personally want to thank you for that too.
Thank you. I remember the first time uh, we came over to your house. Uh, Devlin and Creston were little toddlers, and what I appreciated about Anita was we came from the north, so there was this thing about trying to fit in as a northern woman, Italian, only daughter with two older brothers. So there was kind of a stigma, is that the word, on a northern woman, and wanting to um, make us or me into this Southern belle. And I looked at,
That ain't happening.
I remember I looked at uh, Miss Diane Brown, and I thought, I am never going to be that sweet little Southern belle. And Anita, because of Anita, she accepted me as just the personality that I had and was, and made me comfortable to just be that and not have to change in character, but not change in
Yeah, no, I
personality.
like your personality the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I like what you cook too.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
well, I
really
love to
good.
cook.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my favorite thing.
Yeah. Well, and too, I think the thing that's changing is the idea of what a pastor's wife should be or ministry should be, and that it's not just pastors or local churches. It really has to be your life.
Yeah.
And so what we do is just the part of the ministry that we do is a small part of our lives, really. And our life is what we do every day, all day long, and that's got to show there.
And
And
I remember also when we were pastoring, for you, because I consider you, Pastor Lonnie, my pastor. And I tell everybody,
Dr. Lonnie Curl, by the way.
okay, sorry,
Okay.
Dr. Lonnie Curl.
Yeah.
And so I remember always calling you up, and just because pastoring for 10 years was not an easy thing.
You never called him about me or anything like that,
I
right?
called him a lot of times about you.
What? You mean, what did you want to know how to handle the
And
sweetness? What was it?
and I remember one time I called you, and this was after pastoring, and just crying, and you started laughing. And I go, "You're laughing at me." You go, "No, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because just this morning the Lord put on your heart and it was a scripture. And you said something to me because in my heart I was like, well, I'm just not going to be a part of the church. I'll just go sit in the back." And you said something that just turned me
You told the
around,
story, you remember?
and told a story about yourself, and I was like, that's exactly what I'm doing, pulling away, but encouraged me to just. So you've always been an encouragement to me, especially, and I tell people all the time in our travels, Pastor Lonnie Curl's my pastor. So, and
Hey,
Lambs is my family.
hey, and it's an honor too,
Yeah.
and it always will be.
Yeah, it's been a blessing. Yeah.
And well, the this year, where have y'all been already this year?
Let me see. New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, um,
Colorado.
Colorado, Washington State, Texas, um, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. Uh,
Connecticut.
yeah, I said that, I think, in New York, right? Um,
New Hampshire.
Indiana, New Hampshire,
Vermont.
Vermont. Yeah. Uh, yeah. And it with in those other places within that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I
time.
know
Yeah,
some
right.
places you minister in the same area, but minister at different congregations because you've kind of expanded because of the ministry that the Lord has made you a steward of and entrusted you with, and the blessing it is. I know that it's resulted in actual communities, like even here in Florence. It's like now the Lord's opened a door of opportunity with you for another pastor in his congregation, and part of that's because he and I have a relationship, and it's opened a door that when you were here this
Yeah,
past year and then this year, and the same thing's happening up in Washington. I think Washington State
yeah.
because of the Tiltons and
Yeah.
some
And
of the other folks, and the
Yeah.
Connecticut, same type thing. And I think that is a true testimony of what the church is supposed to be
Yeah.
because um, for a lot of folks, they might not understand there's a gift, a prophecy, that is for edification and exhortation and comfort, but then there's also the prophetic office that people operate in, and that's different. And a lot of people I don't think understand that. Matter of fact, I'd like for y'all to come back and let's do a supplement program, maybe just address some of those things, and you could break some of that down and bring clarification to that because all of it is good. I mean, I think it's all wonderful,
yeah,
but I don't. I think sometimes where it says God's not the author of confusion, I think that there are times people are operating in one level and they're calling it something else, and then it creates a level
Hmm.
of confusion for people. And then when that happens, people instead of what Paul said in First Thessalonians chapter 5, he said, don't despise, the gift of prophecy. I think it's resulted in people sometimes kind of putting their hands up and kind of, being reluctant because of the way they've seen it mishandled.
true.
And and
Yeah,
Paul said to Timothy, he said, We need to study to show ourselves approved workmen of God who don't need to be ashamed, rightly dividing and rightly handling the word of truth." And I think you've done a great. I think you've done a great job. And when I use the term job, I mean just a great, been a great steward in your life of developing and maturing in that and evolving into the place that you are, and for the fact that you enjoy it, you like it, and it's actually fun for you. It's not it's a labor of love, but it's not something that I've seen people that felt like they had to have fire shooting out their eyes
yeah,
and they had to have brimstone coming out of their mouth type stuff, and they thought that
yeah,
was prophecy, and yet that's not new covenant prophecy.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Good point.
yeah, it's something else. You want
Yeah,
to
yeah. I'd love to talk about that. We
okay?
get then probably maybe another program. But yeah, I agree. And it's been fun because it's been an evolution with me. Obviously, the first time, I laugh a lot of times and I tell the story because the first time that I ever heard it uh, was, our first church that we were in. I didn't even know what it was. I think even when we were in the prayer group, there might have been some, but we didn't really know anything. I think they might have had like a word of encouragement or something, 2 or 3 words. But yeah, the first time I said, Lynn, I said, what was that? And she says, it's prophecy. I says, prophecy, what's that? She says, God speaking. I said, he speaks? Because I was learning he writes because we didn't the church we grew up in, there was no Bible, so I didn't honestly didn't even start reading my Bible until I came to Bible college. I was a little bit behind, and because I just never liked to read, and I just thought that's so huge of a book, and it seems so difficult to understand. Obviously, things have changed now, but um, and I said to her, I said, "Wow, do you have to be a pastor to do that?" And she says, "No, anybody can. In the gift of prophecy." So immediately I fell in love with it. And then when the prophetic word started to come to me, I thought that it was just several things. One, I thought it was the coolest thing. Two, was that this God that I was beginning to know really was that personal, and that really kind of made me fall in love with it. And as I learned about it, especially through you guys and when we were together, is how it's been so encouraging to me to wage the battle, not so much with demonic or church, with my own emotions and faith and believing and trusting, especially when it comes to places I haven't been before in prophecy or dimensions I just didn't consider. And he loves to if I'm willing to move there. And there's been times I haven't, and and then he'll question me about that. And I don't really answer those questions because there's reputation involved and all these different things. But that's what's made it so fun. I think what it did in my personal life and the encouragement it's been for me, because there's things that we adventure out to now and things that I'm doing now and things that I'm saying now that I think 20 years ago I would have never even considered. But the prophetic word came, was kind of like a seed, this in my heart, in my spirit, and it would evolve. And it's caused me to trust him as I've gotten to know him more in ways that I would not have. And the intimacy part, as you know, though, I think has probably been the biggest key. We could talk about that afterwards, but I think that's been something, and also what the church has gone, what the prophetic ministry has gone through over these years, and how what the Lord's doing with it. I think too is key.
Let me ask you a question, just so you can respond and people can hear this response. I kind of know what it is before I ask it, but you want to comment on the fact that I think there are people that are pursuing and seeking an office where that's not really what your pursuit has been. Your pursuit has been really to seek the Lord and his presence and to know him. And I think that's what Paul said in Philippians 3. He said that I might know him. And for the fact that I know you and have known you both, since the early 80s, and we've all walked this out together, I think that's been a brand that somehow God, by his word and his spirit, placed on our lives that, that, matter of fact, people have asked me, said, "Why do you think that's not in everybody?" I said, "I don't know. I can't explain that."
Yeah,
I said, "But I can explain that I can't live without it. I
yeah,
have to have it." And I know that we grew up in an environment sometimes that people were looking for positions or platforms, and that really wasn't what your objective or goal was. It was for his presence. You want to?
yeah. I think that's great. It, when we started, I think it was in our hearts in the beginning, and I think like in the generation that's coming up behind us, I call them Generation Now. That's what this particular weekend's about. I think it's already there with them. And I think the guys who raised us, it was about gifting, ministry, and calling, but there was something from the beginning he put in our hearts so that I wanted to know him. I fell in love with him from the beginning. And as I and I think even with the guys that I met that came from here, especially with you, with Dr. Hall. I think John Carr was probably the most influential. But I saw a difference between the men and women who flowed in their gifts and those who kind of knew him. And when you start watching Jesus and read Jesus, that's what really became. He had this intimacy with his father, super gifted, obviously, but it wasn't about that. He even never even talks about it. He doesn't call himself an apostle. He doesn't call himself a prophet. He just doesn't say these things. But in his life, though, there's this unveiling of an intimate life, and I think that changed it. And so I thought I'd rather. I appreciate the gifting. Like some people will say, they'll say that about me, but that's not really been the pursuit from the beginning. And I
Yeah.
think I'd rather know the one who knows and know the one who's saying it. And I, unfortunately, like even with my relationship with him, sometimes I go, it's almost been unfair for prophets because in the ones we've known in our life, because the channel is so open. I think that sometimes it can be misinterpreted that the one I'm speaking for actually know him, but it really isn't the case. Yeah, we laugh at this, but it's true though. If Balaam's ride, his donkey could speak, I guess the Lord could use anybody to speak. Yeah, and I don't really want to be a vessel. I don't want to be just a cup. I don't want to be just a tool. I just never wanted to be that. I don't think it's wrong, but that's not what I want. And I appreciate you even noticing that. And it's something, the intimacy part is something I like pushing and wanting everybody to pursue. But I don't think it's the case. I do think though that he in the time we're living in is changing that. And maybe we're the byproduct of what he's been doing.
Yeah. Well, I remember Rick Howard it ended up one of the latter books he did, and he did it on Matthew 13, and he talked about that in the kingdom, you had both old treasure and new treasure.
Yeah,
And it's like, and I think there's a tendency sometimes to want to, the new wants to discard all the old. The old doesn't want to embrace the new. But the truth is, there's something to be said about people that are older. I saw this with Fuchsia Pickett. I saw this with Marion Brown. I saw it with
Judson the
Judson
same. Yeah.
Cornwall.
Yeah.
I saw it with a lot of different people where they kept embracing the life of the Spirit because, Paul said to the Corinthian church, he said that the outward man perishes, but the inward man is renewed day by day. And what they call was the renewal of the inward man. And they realized the newness was in the renewal part of the inward man or the heart, and they embraced that, and they were able to shed many of the things that had been alive at one time but no longer had life in it, and let go of that, but embrace the new and walk in that. And I think I think that's part of what the Lord has been doing in our lives, even though we're older now than we when we first started out and knew each other in the early 80s. But I'm thrilled about what the Lord is doing. I'm excited about it. But I'm really thankful for you and Linda being a part of my life and the encouragement that that brings to me and to so many others. But my own life personally, it's the value of it. I can't put a value on that. I can't say, it's only worth this or this because it's not. I mean, it's life to me. And
Feel the same way,
um,
right?
and and the life that y'all carry and encourage means so much. And see, I think in the hour that we're in, I think that's so important because I don't. I'm not one of these people that has the answer to everything that's going on in every situation because it's always fluid, it's always
Yeah.
changing, it's always moving. But the one thing that's consistent and constant, I think, is the Lord. And see, when we can see that, hold of that, then we're okay. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And the people around us, we can encourage them. Hey, even though the mountains are removed
Right.
and the oceans are roaring and stirred up, and everything's wild, it doesn't matter. The Lord is. It's Psalm 46 says he's settled.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. We're good.
Love that.
And so I tell you what, we're kind of coming to a close for this session, but will y'all come back for another
You
session?
love it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Well, Lord, just thank you for those that are listening
Yeah.
today. pray blessing and encouragement for them. And Lord, if anything, that the eyes of our understanding would continue to be opened and you would reveal, Lord, by the spirit of revelation and wisdom of the riches of your inheritance that's in each of our hearts and our lives. And we thank you for these things today in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
And